So here's me in a virtual environment. I'm happy. And I'm a three-dimensional character that's being rendered in a three-dimensional world on a screen. So I reach over and I'm wearing a power glove, and I'm wearing one of those the goggles that display each image to each eye, so that I'm receiving a 3D image. I'm using the glove and I reach out and I say create, and I drag my finger, a screen. And let's say it's a 800 by 600 screen. The way that screen's going to print in a 3D environment is going to be the line and down method. So what we need is a screen in a 3D environment that's going to print every single one at the exact same time, which we could create with a bunch of quads or a bunch of triangles, but in order for it to look like pixels we would need a quad. So we'd need 800 by 600 quads, all laying against each other, and then we could print colors to each one and we could resize them to where they looked appropriately. So one of the things I was mentioning is that while I'm viewing myself in this three-dimensional environment and looking at this screen that's printing this way, I'm viewing it through a screen which is printing this way. So there could be an amplification effect where this one's printing this way and refreshing, but the one I'm viewing is printing this way and refreshing, that creates unwanted effects. Kind of like when you're watching a movie and you see somebody walking, and because you got to remember, this thing's always rolling across the screen as it's printing. So it's always creating little artifacts where stuff doesn't match up just right in the picture as you're watching it. So whenever something's moving in this direction and it's getting printed in this direction, it could create a weird little and stuff like that. And then you're going to get an amplification effect. So even if the screen in the 3D environment was to print everything at once, this screen doesn't. So you're still going to get the effect that you don't want. So what you would need is a screen that prints everything at once, so that you can create a screen inside the screen that is a 3D screen. So that you could view 3D within 3D. So while I'm watching this movie that every single pixel pops at the exact same time, or I'm watching a 3D environment where I'm standing in it, let's draw this guy real quick. There I am, I'm standing in this 3D environment. I can barely see this, but so I could look at a 3D screen that's displaying, images to one eye and images to the other eye all simultaneously, while looking at a 3D environment within that screen. It's all displaying it correctly. And that's really what I would like to have, is a screen like that. And I don't know how to really invent one, because I can invent the prototype with the Arduino or a bunch of Arduinos to prove the concept works. But then they need that mic nanotechnology, and even smaller than nanotechnology, to come in there and create these really high resolution touchscreens where every pixel pops at the same time, which would be useful. And you got to remember, this works with this would work with holograms as well. So say you had smoke blowing and you had a bunch of lasers that were connected to some kind of controlling mechanism, and they all pointed to and intersected in points in the smoke where they would create three-dimensional dots. You just got to think of the shape like this, where if I'm going in blocks and I'm updating in blocks, it's going to create a zzz, remove that block, zzz, remove that block, which creates a turning effect, right? Where that would create I don't know. You can't have it work that way. If there's a way around it, we got to figure it out and create it. And it affects all technologies, not just LCD screens, because they all have to move together. Because when one thing's moving this way, another thing can be moving this way. So you can't have an update method where something down here is moving this way, and then I printed this, but this hasn't updated yet, because on a large scale the human eye is still able to see it, and it gets perceived as artifacts and artificial. So I think it would make a smoother, more realistic screen. Whether it's laser printed onto a wall all at the same time, whether all the LEDs are changed all the same time, regardless of whatever the technology is that's used.